Welcome to Boys in the Hood TV. Today we're tapping into the streets of Chicago, and we're going to be looking at the Latin Kings versus the 260s, and it's going to be the story of Sergio Gonzalez, aka Mafia, of the Latin Kings. Now, the Latin Kings and the 260s have been entangled in a violent war since the 70s. This rivalry goes back generations with a lot of blood shed on both sides. Like most gang beefs, it's passed down to the younger generations. Now, out of the two gangs, the Latin Kings are a much larger gang that has much more area claimed in the streets of Chicago. Now, some of these sections are in close proximity with the 2-6 gang. Now, the 2-6s, they have sets in Little Village, Brighton Park, back of the yards, and many other areas. Now, the Kings and the 2-6s mainly share areas like Little Village and the back of the yards. But within those areas, the Kings claim much more turf. The cases we're about to jump in today take place in Little Village and Brighton Park. On May 31st, 2010, Latin King member Sergio Gonzalez, aka Mafia, along with another Latin King member nicknamed Ghost, after leaving the party, decided to look for members of the 2-6 gang. Now, sometime later, they were driving to the 2-6 hood to find anybody out on the block. Shortly after, Gonzalez would spot Miguel Segura, a former Latin King who had flipped to the 2-6. Sergio recognized him from school, so Ghost pulled the van up and Sergio threw up the 2-6 sign, and Miguel seen it and threw up a 2-6 sign back. And that's when Miguel walked over to the van. Sergio would claim that he and Ghost were from 2-6 and they were about to go out and look for Latin Kings to smoke, and they wanted Miguel to join them. But Miguel, being cautious, he refused. That's when Sergio grabbed Miguel and forced him inside the van. The Latin Kings would then drive into the Wild Side Latin Kings set nearby Little Village Academy. They would pull into an alley, and that's when both Sergio and Ghost would pull Miguel out of the van, and they would shoot him multiple times, killing him right there on the spot. Police would arrive sometime later, and they would find Miguel Segura's body laying on the pavement. Now, 2 years would go by, and that case would still go unsolved. But on January 7, 2016, Sergio Gonzalez, along with two other Latin Kings named Jose Juarez and another Latin King only identified as Grizzly, were driving down a block in a white SUV on 41st and Place, which is directly in the 2-6 Terrortown set. Now, standing outside in front of his house, 2-6 member 17-year-old David Gonzalez. Now, both Sergio and Jose were strapped. Sergio had a 9mm on him, and Jose had a 40 with an extended clip. The Kings would slowly drive behind Gonzalez. Both Sergio and Jose would lean out the window and open fire. David was hit 8 times in his back, with one bullet penetrating his heart, lungs, and aorta before it going through his chest. David never saw the shots coming. The Latin Kings would then pull off, leaving David bleeding on the ground. Unaware to them, a patrol car was nearby, heard the shots, and made their way towards the sound of the gunfire. As the Kings continued speeding through stop signs and streetlights, a patrol car got behind them. Eventually, the Latin Kings would crash the SUV into a nearby fence and stop sign, and all 3 Latin Kings would hop out of the car and start running. Now, according to the police, Jose Juarez aimed his .40 cal at the cops, so in return, the officer opened fire, shooting at Jose 2 times. Now, although Jose wasn't hit, he would throw the gun down and surrender to the officers. Moments later, other officers would find Sergio hiding under a nearby porch, and they would detain and arrest him. Now, the third Latin King, only known as Grizzly, would get away. Police would find Sergio's 9mm thrown on the ground in the alley. Now, both guns recovered, the 40 and the 9mm, would have shell cases matching that from the murder scene. Both Sergio and Jose will be charged with first-degree murder. But while in custody, Sergio Gonzalez will come forward and tell the cops that he was a witness to a murder that took place in 2010. And he was referring back to the murder of Miguel Segura. Now, Sergio will go on to tell authorities that there was a Latin King member by the name of Ghost who was the shooter. He would admit his role into pulling Miguel inside of the van, but he would clearly state to officers that he was not the gunman. Now, even though he admitted this, he would still be charged with first-degree murder for his role in the death of Miguel. Now, during the trial, Latin King member Jose Juarez would admit to being in the SUV, but he would claim that the victim, David Gonzalez, shot at them first. He would also go on to say that someone from inside the SUV other than him opened fire, but he said he did not see who did the shooting because he was ducking down. But the state will present that there was no evidence showing that 17-year-old David Gonzalez had a firearm on him. And by the end of the trial, Sergio and Jose will both be found guilty of first-degree murder. Now, Jose will be sentenced to 45 years in prison. Sergio will be sentenced to 50 years in prison for the murder of David Gonzalez, and he will also receive 20 years in prison for the murder of Miguel Segura. I would like to thank everybody for tapping in, and I'll see y'all next time.